大家好，我叫李叶帅，我是美国纽约的。今天我要给你们聊聊，可不可以？好，我要给你们讲3件事情，就让我很尴尬。第一个就是我在很多群里面，他们会说你好黑鬼，我死你妈卖批，不要叫我黑鬼，我死你妈哟，这个真的很不礼貌，我讨厌。第二个事情就是第二个 what the fuck 第二个我记得第二个就是有时候有一些人有时候有一些问我还在拍。有时候有一些人会问我，你从哪里来？你是哪里人？我要说美国纽约，他们要说不可能，美国不是白皮肤的吗？我死你妈哟！奥巴马不是黑人吗？ Will Smith 也不是黑人吗？ Kobe Bryant 也不是黑人吗？我操！第三个事情就是有时候男人他们会问我，你下面是不是很大？我操！下次谁再问我这个问题，我就把衣服脱掉给他看一下。
But I was taken aback by the extent to which racism is practiced against blacks in China openly. So in America, we have a civil rights culture. So racism, you have to tuck it under.
It has to be covert.
It has to be covert. And China is very much overt.
So like what kind of things happen? I've never been to China. I've always wanted to go.
Is it Japan too or just China?
I'm going to say China, not so much in Japan.
They show a lot of love for our culture.
More so
really
China.
Our culture,
because America has a very close relationship with Japan. They're the third leg of the Trilateral Commission. So the Japanese are considered the white men of Asia. So we're speaking of China in particular. There were certain nightclubs that we couldn't go into.
Really?
Oh yeah, and they will tell you no black people are allowed here.
What?
There's certain sections of certain neighborhoods you can't live in. So for example, if they don't want you in a certain section in Brooklyn, they will just use clever real estate tactics to keep you out.
Right.
Okay, i.e. your credit ain't good enough or the bank didn't approve your loan. They don't have to do that in China. Exactly.
They're direct with it.
They're direct with it. We don't want black people here.
Why? It's crazy because I know a lot of people like in the garment industry, they end up having to go to China. Like a lot of people I know, they go there for long periods of time because that's where the factories are and so on and so forth.
Is it black people?
Yeah. And I've never heard anybody say that before.
Oh, without question. And the irony is what? Africa is rolling out the red carpet for China. I mean, they're taking over the Caribbean. They're taking over Africa.
They're taking over the Caribbean.
They're all in South Africa. In fact, Mandarin is now an official language in the Republic of South Africa. Zulu isn't. Xhosa isn't. So the indigenous languages are not taught in the school. But Mandarin is. That speaks to the influence of China. But they don't roll out the red carpet for us in China.
You know, it's interesting though when you think about it. You think about historically over the years when you go into Chinese establishments and the way they treat us. I mean, that's why Old Dog Smoke Dude in Menace. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be clear. I never put two and two together, but yeah.
Well, my dad's Chinese, and I mean, look, my whole side of my family is Chinese. I will say this though: my grandparents weren't happy about my dad marrying a black woman, and they definitely didn't go to the wedding.
Really?
Okay, well, you just proved our point again.
Right. And they're from China, but my aunts and uncles all are fine because you know they were born here, so it's different.
Now remember now, when you travel throughout Asia, okay, particularly when you go to Southeast Asia, they get darker skinned. For example, in Vietnam, there's Vietnamese who look just like us.
Yeah.
They have the Asian phenotype, okay, the face structure, but the skin tone and the hair is just like us. I remember speaking to some elders who served in Vietnam. They said we brought some of those prisoners of wars on the truck, and they look like they could have been from North Philly or South Bronx. They look just like us. The Cambodians look just like us. Even in China, there's certain places you can go where the Chinese are black skinned. skin with nappy hair. Again, the Asian face structure, but totally African because we're the first to settle China.
There's
Remember,
so many
Buddha.
Chinese Jamaicans, though. There's a lot of Chinese Jamaicans.
Yes.
There's a lot.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So remember now, Buddha comes from India and goes into China. And I had a chance to visit a Buddhist temple, but Buddha was a black man. And when you look at any of the early statues of Buddha, you clearly see the locks and the twisties. He doesn't get the modern phenotype of the Asian until the past 100 years or so. But any ancient statue of Buddha clearly shows him as an African. Same thing with Krishna, the god of the Vedic tradition. Krishna means the black one, and Buddha means the black face. So clearly there's an African origin of Asia, but there's an African origin no matter where you go in the world because we're the first to build every civilization everywhere. So I don't care if you're in Mexico, if you're in Europe, who were the first Europeans? The Grimaldis of Africa, who migrated 20 to 40,000 years ago, and in the process of climatology, lost the pigmentation, the deep pigmentation that we have. So no matter where you go, we were the first people there.
Is there any place in the world we can go and not experience racism?
No, not at all.
Even the Caribbean?
Not even in the Caribbean. In fact, when I was in Jamaica, I keynoted the Garvey celebration last summer, Ocho Rios. The Chinese pretty much own Jamaica. I mean, the Jamaican government is giving them concessions, land concessions. They're building hotels, beach resorts. They're building 2 schools for the Japanese, for the Jamaicans. And what the Jamaicans have to give them in turn is the right to certain lands, the right to certain waterways. And if it doesn't stop, Jamaica, ironically, the land of Marcus Garvey and Bob Marley, will be the first Chinese colony in the Caribbean.
Wow.
It's getting bad. And you know why it's happening? Because the black bourgeoisie leadership in both Africa and the Caribbean, they don't have to live with the consequences of the economic decisions they make. So if I'm the president of Jamaica, okay, and China says, listen, we're going to give you $1 million in retirement. We're going to build you a retirement home, but we want this, this, and this. And you can loan as much money as you want. You can borrow as much money from the Bank of China as you want. I'm going to be set by the time I leave office. But what about my nation? Jamaica will be struggling for the next 50 and 75 years because of bad economic decisions from selfish leaders today. And that's the problem in Africa, and it's the problem in the Caribbean.
No, that's true. I remember, I love going to Anguilla, and a couple years ago, just one of the guys on the island was like, the Chinese taking over everything here.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And we were just talking about when I was in the Bahamas, and everybody got mad about this. The Bahamas, they said the Chinese people were building that hotel.
Well, you got to remember, China is overpopulated. So it's always looking for opportunities to dump some of this excess population.
Right.
And you know what's so sad? Chinese will come to South Africa poor, with nothing. And in 3 years, they're owning 2 and 3 major businesses. Because what happens is when the Chinese come, they employ their own. They don't employ indigenous African labor. But this is exactly what the heads of state tell black people. Let the Chinese come to Jamaica. Let them come to South Africa. They're going to give you guys jobs. The jobs never come. They bring their own population, which makes sense from their perspective because they have so many people that need a place to go outside of China. So they're showing up broke and going back home as millionaires.
I was just thinking that. Have you ever went to a Chinese food store and seen anything other than a Chinese person?
Yeah, I have.
Never.
I've never.
I have.
Or a Chinese restaurant?
In Brooklyn, you can.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I've seen a kosher Chinese restaurant. Like it seems like it's a kosher
Halal, they have
with the
halal
Jewish
Chinese restaurants.
people that
Yeah.
own the Chinese
Yeah.
spot.
It's rare though. But the question, Envy, is why is that? And that's because every culture comes to America to build an economic empire for themselves. The Chinese, East Indian, Arab, Latino, whoever comes to America comes to build a cultural empire. Everyone except African Americans. So when you travel the country, you got a little Italy in every major city.
Right.
You got a Chinatown in every major city. You even see little Cambodias popping up now around the
Yeah,
United
Martin
States.
Luther King in every city too.
Exactly. Well, you got
black people living on it.
You got a Martin Luther King Jr. Street.
Yeah, street.
You have a Martin Luther King Jr. Street,
Right.
but there's no Africa Town. There's no place in Black America you can go and find the 4 essential institutions needed for a community: bank, school, supermarket, hospital. And you know why that's ironic? Last year, Black America in 2016, we spent $2 billion on Air Jordans, $4 billion on liquor and alcohol, $600 million on fast food, and we bought twice the amount of Mercedes-Benzes as white America, although white America has twice the wealth of black folk. So the question becomes, what is it about the Mercedes-Benz that makes it so attractive to African Americans even when they can barely afford it? And it's because it's a status symbol.
That's all.
And one thing we know about oppressed people, when you can't enjoy true freedom, you surround yourself with the symbols of that freedom.
Absolutely.
And And that's why the Louis bag is so important. That's why our children will kill for Air Jordans. It's not the sneaker. It's what it represents. And if I believe I'm worthless, that means I can only add value to myself by what I put on my body as opposed to what I put in it.
Any nation that doesn't have